Hello everyone, and happy Wednesday afternoon. I guess it's Wednesday here, hump day, in the middle of Wednesday of all things. So here we are, and welcome to week 3 of the Getting Unstuck in Event Marketing. So hopefully some people have an opportunity to join us today, but if not, this will be posted in the feed after I'm done this afternoon. So thank you for coming out, and I'm excited to be here. So today we are going to talk about the changes in events from in-person events to virtual events. And so at the end of the day, a lot of the components are going to be similar, regardless of whether you're at a live event or an in-person event or a virtual event. And so for just a second, I want everyone who's watching this to take a moment out and just pause and think about a Zoom meeting that you've been on recently. And give everyone a second to think about that. So a Zoom meeting maybe isn't bringing you a whole lot of joy, so to speak. Maybe you're in a corporate meeting and you feel like you've heard the same things before and it's not very engaging or exciting. Okay, so next I want you to take a moment and think about a trade show that you've been to recently. And so here I'm going to give you 2 different scenarios. The first one is going to be walking by a big trade show booth, and you see all these bells and whistles, and there's all these awesome, engaging, interactive activities for you to participate in. So whether or not this is, hi, thank you for joining, whether or not this is a company that you've met before or worked with before, you're gonna have this memory after you've left this exhibit. So now let's keep walking down that trade show aisle. And down the aisle from where we just were, you run into a 10 by 10 booth, and there's no lights. There's a guy, he's sitting behind the table. He's doing something like this. He's not paying any attention to you. He's not trying to engage in conversation with you. And on his table, there are some brochures. So what I've described to you here is the opposite of engaging, right? So notice that at the same exact event, we can have events and exhibits that are engaging and exciting, and we can also have exhibits that are not very exciting. So that same exact concept is going to apply when you get onto the virtual event platforms, right? Because now we're getting emails every day from people who are trying to promote the newest, latest, and greatest event platform. We offer engagement opportunities. We offer interactions. We offer all sorts of different widgets and things. Well, these might or might not be beneficial for you, depending on what your needs are. But at the end of the day, what you really want to be thinking about is the core components that hold true not only on the trade show floor, but also on the virtual platform. So one of the most important things is going to be content, right? Because if someone comes into your space and you're not telling them something interesting or something that they already, that is new to them, then they might not want to stick around. Because a lot of virtual event registration is potentially free for attendees. If the event is free and the day comes around and they get caught up in a bunch of other meetings, they don't have a lot of skin in the game. So maybe they're not going to show up, right? And statistics are showing that the pre-registration rates for virtual events are, in terms of arrival and actually showing up, are lower than that of live events. So what do we need to do to tackle this? Well, one of the most important things we want to do is make sure that we are giving people something that is interesting for them so that afterwards they say, wow, that was pretty cool. I'm going to take you guys to another scenario here. Hi, thanks for joining. So let's think about the last time you went somewhere that you really wanted to go. Maybe it was Disney, maybe it was a concert, maybe it was an amusement park, maybe it was a football game. Whatever that activity was, what is it that left the lasting impression on you that you're going to look back and say, wow, I remember this and it's forever recorded in my mental database. So now, when you start to think about that, think about how that's going to apply to a virtual event. So for example, let's say that I want to launch a new product and I think that my attendees are interested in psychology or ophthalmology or geology, whatever topic that they're interested in. So who would be the coolest keynote speaker that I could bring to that event that they would say, wow, that was really cool? An example of that is I recently attended the Adobe experience and Adobe Live, and they had Brene Brown. Brene Brown is amazing, and everyone was engaged in listening to what she had to say because, you know, she's someone that everyone wants to hear from. So if you start thinking about it from that kind of angle of what is it that I can do that makes this more interactive and not just a person talking, and I know that's kind of what I'm doing with you guys today, but this is just a mini series. But if we were to develop this into a whole program, what is it that's going to get your attendee interested? What is it that's going to get them to actually show up? And what is it that's going to resonate with them that they think of after and they say, wow, that was actually pretty interesting. I'm really glad that I took the time out of my day to join. There's a benefit to the virtual event that you might not have in an in-person event, which is that although you can get your attendee to engage with your event when you're in person on virtual platforms and social media platforms, it's going to be easier for you to be able to do that for your virtual event because you already have them. They're already looking at their device. They're already in front of their computer. So think about ways that you might be able to get them to follow you, click on your product catalogs. So any way that you can engage them. I'm just going to take a side note here because we could talk about virtual events and hybrid events for literally hours. But I'm trying to keep these mini series at about 15 minutes. And I just want to go through quickly what the types of events that you might want to consider when you're talking to your team. So for one, there's going to be the webinar. Everyone has been to this point in 2020 has been on a webinar. So think about, is that the right platform for you? Maybe there's a sponsor that's being introduced at the beginning of the webinar. Maybe there's polling and questions that are being asked during the webinar. There's also virtual conferences. And think about not only virtual conferences that are planned from your internal company's perspective, but what about ways that you as a company can then instead go out and interact with someone else's virtual event? So instead of putting together the whole event, being a participant in someone else's program. So kind of letting them work through those wheels of all of the different pieces that need to be put together and get involved and make sure that you're contributing content that the attendee would be interested in. What else did I want to mention to you guys today? We talked about the speakers, we talked about the content, and we talked about some of the different platforms. But lastly, we want to make sure that we're still offering that networking opportunity to the attendees, because at the end of the day, one of the benefits of the in-person event is getting to know people. So if you have golf events or brunches or activities that the attendees are able to get to know each other during, the same is going to apply for your virtual platform. So maybe there's an online cocktail party that you can have. You can do a virtual toast. You can do a game. You can have people gather information and bring it together and contribute. You can have contests on your social media pages. So just thinking out loud about all of the various angles and ways that you can approach these events, because at the end of the day, again, there's a lot of talk, well, a virtual event isn't the same, as an in-person event, and it's not. You can't hug people. But a lot of the underlying components that are going to keep your attendee interested are similar, and maybe they just take a lot of extra thinking, but at the end of the day, that's going to be, a challenge for you and your team, but it does not mean that it won't prove to be extremely successful. So, thank you all for coming out and listening to this. And I have one more week to the mini series coming up next Wednesday at 2:00 Eastern time. So for those of you who are watching this after, please follow us at our Instagram page at Event Driven Solutions to learn more. And if you're interested in learning more about virtual events or need help with yours, we're always here to field questions or thoughts or ideas and brainstorm together. So thank you all so much for coming out today, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. Bye, everyone.